We'll kick it back over to you, Dr. Norris.
Thank you so much, Dr. Battle. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. Again, my name is Elisa Norris. I'm the Executive Officer of Strategy and Performance Management, and it's my pleasure, along with my colleague, Mr. Ryan Latimer, who is the Director of Boundary Planning, to share with you some fifth grade transition planning updates. Next slide, please. As a reminder, this is part of the reimagine work that we've started at the beginning of the year and that we've kept pushing forward. And this is one of the uniform strategies that we have committed to, which is to return to this pre-K, K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12 school model. So this is part of the uniform strategies that we know will push the work forward, certainly, and will support our students as they continue moving forward. Next slide, please. And this is part and parcel the pathway to success that we've imagined for Metro Schools Reimagined. We're asking ourselves the question, what do we need to do in elementary school so that we can prepare our students for post-secondary success and opportunities? And so we know then that in elementary, it is about laying the foundations for continuous academic and SEL improvement and development. It's about sustainable practices that will certainly support our students in their engagement and their achievement. And then transitioning, you see in between, making sure that we have robust transition plans in place so that once they get to high school, once they leave our shores, Metro schools, they will be successful in whatever post-secondary opportunities they see fit. Next slide, please. So here we are, returning to the clusters that we started with Metro Schools Reimagined. Again, to Dr. Battle's point, we started with Maplewood, Pearl-Cohn and Whites Creek, and this is where we are beginning that transition, fifth grade back into the elementary space. But as a reminder, here's our reimaginings for each of the clusters, right? And it was about returning to what was already working in the cluster and taking to scale those best practices so that we can reimagine the opportunities for our students. So in Maplewood then, we reimagined creating that feeder pattern as a unified branded AVID program cluster, right? And we see the schools here that are in the Maplewood cluster. Next then, it's Pearl-Cohn. And Pearl-Cohn, we imagine creating that unified Music City Arts. We have Pearl-Cohn High School as the entertainment magnet, already the hub, and then bolstering that health sciences pathway so that we can have that cluster. And again, you see the schools that are in that cluster and that feeder pattern there. And last, but certainly not least, Whites Creek. We reimagine then for Whites Creek, creating those early college opportunities so that our students have the opportunity to graduate with both a high school diploma and associate's degree. And so here are the clusters. This is where this fifth grade transition work is going to begin. Next slide, please. So the argument then for this move, right, is that our own data shows us that students who remain in the fifth grade setting in elementary, fifth grade students as a group, rather, who remain in the elementary setting outperform their peers who are in the middle school setting. What we've also learned and listened to is our parents, and our parents have indicated to us that they want to keep their students in the fifth grade setting as well. And then for our state standards and our curriculum materials, the packaging, it's along these particular grade bands, K2, 3 through 5, 6, 8, and high school. It makes sense then that we have our school set up in that way. And additionally, state teaching licensing requirements fall along these bands. So definitely we have lots of evidence and data to demonstrate why this is the move to make. Next slide. And so this fifth grade transition it's built upon those domains that undergird the work that is Metro Schools Reimagined. It is about looking at leadership, instruction, culture, and systems. So as we are working through these plans for this fifth grade transition back into elementary setting, we are looking at leadership and asking ourselves, how do we ensure that there is going to be very strong, robust cluster collaboration and alignment, right? Creating that opportunity for true K-12 alignment. Additionally, we are ensuring that there are going to be focused central office supports for transition planning, and that will look like principals, central office support, district support, executive directors coming together, working together so that we can ensure that we have the very best plans. Around instruction then, it is about providing those additional PD opportunities for our students, our teachers rather, to make sure that they are well prepared for this new teaching opportunity. And then also it's about early planning to support our EE and EL service delivery models. Thinking about culture, it is about, and Dr. Battle referenced this earlier in her presentation, it is about making sure that we have those age-appropriate developmental supports around SEL, and also creating opportunities for those middle school experiences. So important to the Metro Schools Reimagine work is transitions. How do we shore up those transitions so that as they move from elementary, middle, and high school, they can continue to gain momentum, certainly toward their post-secondary success. And so it's about creating those opportunities around culture. And then systems, right? We know that it is because of strong systems that our students can be successful. So we understand the need then for a robust communications plan to reach multiple stakeholders, making sure that as our 5th grade students move back into elementary, they have the furnishings that will support them as they're doing their learning, and then also being creative around scheduling so that we can ensure that our 5th grade students, even as they are in the elementary setting, they are prepared for the middle school experience. Next slide, please. So here are some questions. Here are some questions that have emerged as we begin this planning, certainly around after school care at the elementary school. And yes, 5th grade students will have access to that same after school care. Will 5th grade students at elementary school take the related studies classes? So 5th grade students at the elementary school will have access to similar scope and sequence instructionally, and then also access to music, art, and physical education opportunities. Class size, the average class size then when we make this move will be 20 to 25 students per class. And then is there any additional documentation that will need to be filled out? No. Our students will automatically be assigned to classes and no additional steps are needed. And so part of our planning process is to create these FAQs so that we can share them out with our different stakeholders so that everyone is well informed of what this will look like moving forward. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ryan Latimer, who'll share a little bit more about what we have at work. Mr. Latimer.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Norris, and good evening, board members and Dr. Battle. I have just a few slides to discuss on what moving to a K5-6-8 configuration would look like in Maplewood, Pearl-Cohn and Whites Creek as it relates to the student assignment planning and the facility utilization. But as I begin, I did want to share a map that details what it will take to move all of MNPS schools to a K5-6-8 configuration. So this map shows all the district elementary schools, the little various colored dots on it. And behind that are the high school clusters in various shades. The schools are broken down into really 4 different buckets. The green schools are those that we can go K5 in right now, so they have the capacity to add the 5th grade. As you can see, the 3 clusters we're talking about tonight are all in the green. The yellow schools are those that have high populations of out-of-zone students, and so to go K5 there, we just need to reduce the out-of-zone enrollment for 1 to 3 years a little bit to create the space to add the 5th grade in those schools. The other 2 colors, the orange and the red, are loosely related, and we'll be working on going K5 in those schools over the next few years as funding allows. And next slide, please. The next 3 slides we've shared before, and I'm going to go over this one in more detail and then just go over the highlights on the next 3. This slide shows 3 years of enrollment history in the Maplewood cluster, the projected 5th grade class for next year, which is currently their 4th graders, so it's assuming that all of those kids would remain there for 5th grade. The current utilization based on the October enrollment of 2020-21. The next column is the initial projection for the K5 grade configuration. And this factors in the school's current enrollment, rolling their 4th grade to 5th grade, and a percentage increase for returning to a normal school year. So if you're following along with Ida B. Wells, there's 229 students now. We would add 50 for the 5th grade, and then there's about 16 students in there that we would add for returning to normal, which brings us to the 295 students. For the Maplewood Elementary School cluster, this would add roughly 270 students and would bring the utilization in the elementary schools from 56% to 71%. Jerry Baxter would become a 6-8 school and would see an enrollment decline. Overall, we anticipate adding 322 students in the Maplewood cluster through this move. Next slide, please. For Pearl-Cohn, the elementary schools in this cluster would add 214 students, and the utilization would go from 36% to 46%. John Early and McKissick would both become 6-8 middle schools and would see an enrollment decline. Overall, the Pearl-Cohn cluster would add 226 students. Next slide, please. For the Whites Creek cluster, this transition would add 168 students to the elementary school tier and would increase utilization from 68 to 85%. Haynes would become a 6-8 middle school and would see an enrollment decline. Overall, the Whites Creek cluster would add 176 students. And just a quick note, as we do this transition, the capacities for some of the middle schools will change as it goes from a K4 configuration to a K5 configuration. And so it's just converting a few rooms that are typically staffed at 20-1 to 25-1. And so for Alex Green, for example, when we add 5th grade, it would add 10 students roughly to the capacity, and it would go from 349 to 359. And thank you for your time. That's all I have.
All right, next slide, please. Thank you so much, Mr. Latimer. And so I want to share with you a timeline that we're working under. So on January 7th, we had an informational meeting with the principals who will be affected by this transition, this first round of transition. And so as a result of that, we have put together an ongoing planning team. And this planning team will consist of principals, district support, and executive directors. Certainly we have principals and executive directors who have gone through this process and gone through it successfully. So we'll be leaning on their wisdom and their expertise and their experiences to certainly help us with this plan. January 19th, we will have an informational meeting with faculty and staff at the schools that will be going through this transition. There will be a community meeting on January 21st from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. to share with our community stakeholders our plans regarding this transition. And then just a note, the choice window opens on January 25th. And so this is the timeline we're operating under to ensure that we are well positioned and well prepared for the start of next school year. Next slide, please. So with that, I want to certainly thank the board for your continued support around this. We're excited. We know that this is the move to make, and under the umbrella of Metro Schools Reimagined, it is about reimagining what is possible, what is the biggest, brightest future that we can imagine possible for our students. And we recognize the opportunities that are presented to us moving 5th grade back into the elementary setting. So with that, I'll say thank you again. And Dr. Battle, I'll turn it over to you.